بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونشكره على هدايته ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The topic of today for discussion is what was proposed, a question regarding jinn from Islamic point of view. There is a surah, a famous surah in the Holy Quran by the name of Jinn, that begins by أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أوحي إلي أنه استمع نفر من الجن فقالوا إنا سمعنا قرآنا عجبا. It has been revealed to me or to us that a group of from jinn has listened to the Quran and said that indeed we have heard an amazing recital. Before I discuss this issue, I need to read a couple of things that for further research. Those writers who are writing on occult, they have began writing about jinn as well, particularly within the Christian world, but also addressing it from the Islamic point of view. There is a book called Jinn Magic, How to Bind the Jinn to Do Your Bidding. The author is Baal, B-A-A-L, Cadman. And I'm going to read just a little bit from that book. For most of us, we tend to hyper-focus on beings such as angels, demons, and spirits of the dead, etc. But as you know, there are more out there than that. There is a class of being that is neither angel nor spirit of the dead. They are a parallel entity to humans. So far, what he's saying is very close to how Islam presents the concept of jinn. The Islamic Satan is one of these beings, which is a departure from the West, where the devil is an angel gone rogue, if you look at the literature. These entities are so intertwined with us that it is impossible to go about our day without having some interaction with them. When things go bump in the night, we assume that it is one of the three classes of spiritual entities that we are most familiar with, which is demons, spirit of the dead, and angels. Familiar with, which they are demons, angels, and the spirit of the dead. However, more often than not, they are neither of the three. They are unto a class of their own. In folklore, they are known as jinn, also different spelling. Jinns were brought to light via the religion of Islam, although texts do mention them before Islam. It is from the Islamic stories, however, where we get clear picture of what the jinns are. In fact, modern idea of the genie in the bottle is directly from the stories about jinn. And then he talks about that they are like human beings, and there are ways of doing things that you can do to control them and to serve you. Please, I advise you not to do it, because from our own understanding of the jinn, although they are different entities and they are capable of doing certain things, in most cases, when somebody who is not authorized or powerful enough to be able to control them, if he or she does they retaliate. If they don't like, they retaliate, and retaliate badly. So I wouldn't advise anybody, and he actually talks about it. Before I continue, however, I would like to give you a warning. Jinn, like other spiritual entities, need to be communicated with care. They can grant you whatever you want, but be careful what you ask for. Jinns are notorious for pranksters. You might get what you want, but in a way that you really don't want to. So this book is available if you want to read it, but just as a source of knowledge, how to see how the Western, particularly occult writers, they approach this concept of jinn. In 2012, Pew Trust conducted a research, a full research of 9 Muslim countries, large and small, and they were asked to express their views of different themes or concepts. One of these questions was their views about witchcraft, jinn, and evil eye, whether they thought that it was correct or not. If you download the Pew Trust report, go for chapter 4. Chapter 4 is the one that focuses on this report. Evil eyes are defined as the belief that certain people can cast curses and bad spells that cause harm to happen to other people. Now Pew has looked at it from an academic point of view. They have graph and the different countries that they have asked people what percentage they agree with it. In most countries, 50-50, close to 50-50 agree and disagree. In most countries surveyed, plus 50% affirmed that jinn existed and evil eyes are real. Belief in sorcery is somewhat less common, but again, if you move from one country, sihr and others, you see it that in certain countries there are still believe in it, and even here they come and approach. Can you do this? Can you do that? We have somebody has put spell on us. Can you remove it? Can you deal with it? So, from our perspective, what is jinn? There are over 21 times the word jinn is used in the Quran. One is in the Surah Al-Jinn, and the rest are spread around in different, as ayat in different chapters. The gist of what we can get from these ahadith, inshallah next week I will extend on this conversation because I will focus on the tafsir of Surah Al-Jinn. And by the way, if you want to prepare yourself for next week, go to Al-Tafsir Al-Mizan. Surah Al-Jinn, Marhum Tabatabai has an extensive discussion on the concept of jinn. And for our Persian speakers, you go to Tafsir Nemune under Surah Al-Jinn. Again, they have discussed extensively, so that prepares you. What is jinn? There are basic conceptions that jinns are said to inhabit caves, deserted places, graveyards, and darkness area. This is misconception. The belief in such reality has been studied in psychology and health, the effect of jinn on human being and how it affects the health of people. The literal meaning of jinn is something which is hidden. You cannot see it, invisible. Jannah is being used when the ground it cannot be seen, light cannot get to the ground because of the intensity of the camouflage of the trees and the shrubs on the top. Janeen is not, which is the fetus in the womb, is cannot called janeen because it is not, cannot be seen. Jinn again cannot be seen. In certain verses in the Holy Quran, فَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِ اللَّيْلِ, in the story of Ibrahim, when the darkness covered, and again, concept of Jannah is being used. There are certain, despite the fact that I give the warning that we as ordinary mortals should not approach this field or be fascinated by trying to somehow control them and make them subject, etc., etc. There are some people that, because of the purification of the soul and their spirit and their elevation in that status, they are able to communicate, and jinn deals with them. We have instances about the life of the Holy Prophet that they came to him. We have instances about the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen that they came to him and asked assistance whether he could go and support those who are believers against the disbelievers so that they become successful. In reality, these are unique entities that cannot be visible, but like us, the main difference between us and the jinn is the power of the intellect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted to human beings. They don't seem to have such a powerful tool at their disposal. This is why in some hadith that says that at best the good ones can become the servant of the best of the human being, and they do their deeds. In the story of Solomon, for example, when the arsh of the Bilqis was Prophet Solomon was trying to bring that arsh or the throne from Yemen to where he was residing in Palestine. One of the jinn, he said, he turned his face to his disciples and he said, is anyone can bring this arsh from there to here? And one of the jinns that were present said that I can bring that before you stand up. And there was another person who had the power and knowledge of Ismul A'zam, according to Mufassirin. He said that I can bring that throne before you even blink. And there it was. The throne was brought. So this notion, and there are other verses of the Holy Quran, that these jinns were in serving the Prophet Solomon, and they building for him, diving in the sea to get various jewels from the sea, building pots and pottery and so on, and do the normal deeds that Prophet Solomon wanted. So the jinn served him. Shaitan, if we go back to the early history to the Genesis, Shaitan is one of the jinn, but elevated himself through prayer to the position of Malaika. This is where I need to mention the point that I talked about last time. The misconception that we have is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created 3 different types of realities: human, jinn, and malaika. The classic interpretation is that malaika they are unique creatures that God has created, and they cannot commit sins and disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jinn, on the other hand, they have the potential or the free will. They can submit to the command of Allah, and they can also commit sin. Humans also have this free will, and they can do the same thing. I personally, through research, and there are a number of people that they have opted for this, that technically speaking there are 2 types of creatures: the visible and the invisible. Visibles are the human being, the invisible are jinns. And depending on their spiritual enlightenment and status, they can fall into the three categories of malaika, jinn, and shaitan. Shaitan is a jinn that has gone rogue. Malaika is a jinn that has elevated itself to the higher level. Because we have a number of ahadith that clearly indicates that some of the malaika disobeyed and they were punished. So if they technically, if they cannot disobey, that how do we speak about these ahadith? So in the same manner that we as human beings, we can fall either into the nafs al-ammara category or nafs al-lawwama category or nafs al-mutma'inna category. Those three categories for the jinn are the malaika, the jinn, as well as the shaitans. There are few questions that persistently come out regarding, well, from ahadith, from verses of the Holy Quran, they are obligated the same way that we humans are obligated. Our prophets are their prophets. So if you look at Surah Jinn, clearly states that we heard just now Quran, that a book of revelation that came after the book of Musa. So they are familiar with these prophets and their revelation. They are obligated the same way as we are obligated. And there are certain command and instruction for them that they come to Ahlul Bayt, and they came to the Prophet asking for clarification, and even for somebody on one instance or probably more, the Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu alaihi wasallam during his Khilafah in Masjid al-Kufa had to disappear for 1 or 2 days to go and resolve a dispute with the jinn, and during the life of the Holy Prophet he went to help them out and then came back. They are obligated in the same manner, so they have a similar kind of obligation. Few questions that people's minds have been bothered and they constantly ask. First, whether they marry and they have children. That's something that constantly we are asked. Number two, whether these children are similar to us, where the ancestor was created from fire, as the Quran says, but the children, the offspring, come out of the relationship between male and female. The same thing that happens to human beings. Our ancestors were uniquely created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Adam and Eve, and then through the interaction of Adam and Eve, all the descendant came. Not that Allah for every human being created that person in an independent manner. That's one. Is it possible for humans to marry jinns? This is, and if it is, what would be the outcome? There are some anecdotal stories that say, claim that certain people had that opportunity. I am not convinced that any of worthy literature we have regarding this, because technically the nature is different. Yes, there are verses in the Holy Quran that claims that humans can sink to the level that they become even worse than anything else that we can imagine, and it is in that level that communication begins between jinn that has become shaitan and humans that have dropped to asfal as-safilin. That certain communication take place, and they serve, but at a price. There were a number of stories that people, during, for example, when they were drinking alcohol or prolonged absence of the prayer and fasting, disobedience of Allah, sinfulness, etc., they begin to see vision. And those visions are individuals that they come and they offer their services, but they offer at a price. You burn the Quran, or you burn this thing, or you burn something else, or harm some other people. This is where the interaction takes place between humans that have fallen to the asfal al-safilin and jinn that have gone rogue in the negative sense, that have become shaitan according to our definition. In the history, whether this concept of jinn is unique to Islam, there are certain ahadith at least and verses in the Holy Quran that people, mushrikeen, used to take refuge and ask assistance in the jinn before. So this notion that, particularly if you go to the books of history, they talk about people of mushrikeen, every time they went on a trip and they had to stay overnight in close to a jungle or dark areas, they would chant certain things and they would call for their jinn that was associated with them, or they communicate with that jinn to come and help them out. Because of that unique position, they were able to provide them with certain anecdotal information and claim service in return. The humans served them in return, which Quran says it led to their arrogance, even becoming more arrogant, jinn becoming more arrogant. But leaving the other issues, they are a reality. They have male, female. They are obligated to submit to the command of Allah. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. So the concept of khalq and creation for both of them and submission to the command of Allah is inherent in both of these. And ibadah here just does not mean worship, it means submission. So both of them are obligated to submit to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the prophets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends are prophets for both jinn and ins. They are called jinn because they are invisible, and they are commanded to submit to the command of Allah, and based on where they stand vis-a-vis the command, we can call them either shaitan, or we can call them jinn, or we can call them malaik. The same manners that humans have these three: nafs al-ammara, nafs al-lawwama, and nafs al-mutma'inna. Certainly a person that reaches the high level of nafs al-mutma'inna, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants that power, as the hadith Qudsi says, Abdi ata'ani aj'aluka mathali ana aqul kun fayakun wa anta taqul kun fayakun. With my power I grant you all these privileges that you can say and do whatever. Many stories are narrated from Marhum Qadi and others that they were capable of doing certain things that ordinary people were not able to do. So those people certainly command, they have the power to command submission even from the jinn around the invisible world, and to communicate with them. There are some what we call folkloric stories about some mashayikh being able to communicate with jinns, or some individuals that communicate with jinn and they put a spell on certain families or individuals, and they drop these spells either in a well or hide them in a graveyard or somewhere else. And these things exist. How much of it is true, I am doubtful. Most of the time that people come and approach and ask question, it's about, well, we have had this dream, that dream, and somebody told us that there is some kind of a knotted case for you and your family, and it's dropped in a graveyard somewhere, whether back in Iraq, Lebanon, here or somewhere else. Can you find it? I mean, these kind of things exist, but what you really need to know about jinn, and inshallah next week we will talk about it even further when the Surah Al-Jinn is the commentary on Surah Al-Jinn is given, this is more elevated and explained. When I was in England, there were a number of cases within the Pakistani Indian community that they have a strong belief in the jinn somehow taking over the body of a particular person. There were 2 or 3 cases of the parents beat their daughter to death because she was, in their opinion, she was possessed by the jinn or shaitan. And she was medically, she had problem that she had seizures, but they, instead of talking about seizures, they thought that it was a jinn. And both parents went to prison for a long time. So this notion of within Indo-Pakistani community is prevalent. Now, within our community here is prevalent too, that they come and they tell you, can you help us in put something and negate the effect of the jinn, etc., etc. But these are realities that we are dealing with them. They can, as the Quran says, they see us, we don't see them. We have to be very careful in our communication. If you intend to go and read this book, Jinn Magic, please, although the essence of it, how to bind the jinn to do your bidding, the essence of it is that you can force them or somehow train them to work with you and do certain things. Stay away from it as much as possible. Thank you very much, and then we have any questions, we deal with it.